This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening and welcome to the Late Late Show. My name is Kathryn Taylor. And tonight my special guest is me! And I'll be chatting about my experiences of working in education over the past 2 decades, specifically as a secondary teacher for the past 17 years.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Yes, good evening. I have decided to try my hand at a solo show tonight, and I just wanted to share some musings with you, really. I'll be chatting about my experience of working in education for the past 2 decades, and specifically as a secondary RS teacher, religious studies teacher, for the past 17 years. It's changed, I've changed, and the whole world has changed, and I'll be reflecting on some of those changes and considering whether or not it's been for better or worse. And I would like to invite anybody who'd like to chip in to do so. You can go download the Podbean app, and if you're listening live, I'd love to hear from you. You can post questions in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them, or if you want to call in and speak, then please download the Podbean app and visit ttradio.org, click on Listen Live on the homepage. This should take you directly to the show, and there you can post comments into the chat and ask questions during our conversation and call in if you want. You can call in by pressing the icon at the top of the screen on your phone's app, and if you click that, I'll be able to connect you. So I'm very happy if anybody does want to chip in. I just want to set the scene, really. So this is a reflective show. I'm thinking about what I've noticed about education over the last sort of 20 or so years. Of course, we all have a longer history than our professional lives in education, because, of course, we all went to school. And to hear some people talk, that some people might wonder whether that's qualification enough, but we know that teaching is a highly skilled profession, and that has really changed over the years, hasn't it? I mean, my parents were teachers. There was a lot of teachery talk going on when I was at school, and my mum used to have one of those machines that sort of did the bright pink and the blue, and it wound round and round, and the papers used to come out, and I can remember that being done at home. So, you know, we've all been to school, we've all had an education, and I guess for me, I didn't really think I wanted to be a teacher growing up. It wasn't like I was had hopes and dreams of becoming a teacher. In fact, I was very average academically. My mum used to call me a happy C. I wasn't being pushed particularly hard, although I was made to do all my homework and all the rest of it, and, you know, I wasn't allowed to slack off, but I wasn't pushed. And certainly when I came to do my GCSEs, I coasted through those, I think, probably without having done a great deal of extra study, although of course I did what was required of me. And A-levels, I went to a tertiary college where the attitude was, you know, if you turn up, that's great. These are your A-levels. If you don't turn up, that's on you. You are a young adult. And that was one of those, you know, I just think about our students now in our A-levels and how we just wouldn't have that attitude anymore. It's very much about encouraging students to do their best and to get the best outcomes for them and to put all the scaffolding in place. But that certainly was not my experience as a teenager. And consequently, I left school with you know, a respectable number of GCSEs and not so respectable A-levels, shall we say. And I was thinking about university. I actually went for a very brief period of time, but I didn't get on with it, and so I got a job. And, you know, this went on until I was in my early 20s, at which point I realised that if I didn't do something about my education, then I probably would be looking at very unattractive prospects for the rest of my life. And so I decided, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think certainly people do great things without a university education, but for me, I did feel the pull to get back into academia. So I went to university, and I actually worked all the way through, and I did distance learning, and it turns out that I'm one of those people that's a bit of a cliche, and I don't know if you're old enough to remember the adverts. I think Mitchell and Webb might have parodied these at some point, or Armstrong and Miller, one of those sort of comedy duos from the noughties. But I was one of those people who'd done distance learning, who'd had a variety of jobs, who'd set up their own business, all of that stuff. Why not train to be a teacher? So at the grand old age of 30, I decided to give it a go. And part of what drew me to become a teacher was that I had done a course in philosophy. And philosophy, I found an absolute revelation. I had not really heard of it before, and I didn't really know what it was. And suddenly I picked this course, and it was absolutely eye-opening and mind-opening and all of those things. So I did my course in philosophy and became very interested in human beings, anthropology, society, culture, history, all of the humanities. And I decided to study world religions and the history of religion and all of those things. And at that time, my parents were working in education, and they actually were responsible for a global video conferencing educational service provider, which is, so far in the past. I'm talking about doing video conference online learning back in sort of 2003. And so I started helping out with them, and ended up doing some storytelling to children in America and some RS lessons to children around the world. Just the storytelling, a lot of primary school stuff, and all kinds of things we used to do. We used to get people dressed up as characters from history and all kinds of things, working with various providers. And I found that I really liked it. I found that I really liked working with children, and I was near the end of completing my degree. And so I thought, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go for a PGCE. There was bursaries around for religious studies at that time. And so that's what I did. And I went off to King's College in London and found my way onto a PGCE. Now, I don't know how many people listening have done a PGCE, but I found it a hugely amazing, tiring, exhausting, and enlightening experience. It's, I'd say, probably one of the hardest years of my life I've ever done, and I don't say that with any regret at all, but I certainly felt at times, and I don't know if anyone who's trained more recently can relate to this, but I certainly, the best way I can describe it is walking around a school for 9 months in the different school settings that you're in, feeling as if you've got a post-it note that says "kick me" on your face. And I would plan my lessons late into the night. I would have some pretty disastrous lessons with children. I always struggled with pace, and I'd try and put far too much in and talk far too much. I know it's hard to believe. And my feedback was always things like, how are you going to cover all of that? How are you going to break it down? How are you going to give the children, the children are just, confused. You're going such a pace. And that was really very much my experience. And And, I'd have my mentor meetings and I would inevitably cry and then have to, splash water on my face and go back in for period 5. It was hard. It was really hard. I don't regret it, but it was tough. I think, and I don't know, I don't know whether it's tougher now. Certainly back in 2007 into 8, there was a lot of money around. It was a Labour government. We used to call it the Department of Cushions and Soft Furnishings. There was always hoops to jump through, but there wasn't really anything in the way of cognitive science. There was certain theories, of course, that you had to learn, and because of the university I went to, I very much was sort of raised up in a kind of critical thinking, sort of critical realism. And so that was kind of my diet and things that I wrote about and things that I talked about. But having had more recent opportunity to work with trainees from a variety of pathways over the years, certainly it's not, I think it's a tougher gig now, but I think there's more structure. And I think that in many ways it has changed. So, yeah, I don't know if I would have thrived going from a different route. Certainly, I think I'm a much better mentor now than I ever was back in the day. I thought I was pretty rubbish, actually. And so that's quite an interesting reflection. I think when you are a career changer, you come with a bit of life experience that can lead you to be given more responsibility than perhaps your competence would allow, because for example, I was made head of department as an NQT, a very small department with one person in it, and that one person being me, but a lot of responsibility, looking after 2 different subject areas, religious studies and general studies A-level. And I would say that my teaching, my pedagogy probably did take a bit of a back seat in those early days. And when I had trainees, I don't know that I was wise enough or patient enough, because I was very under an awful lot of pressure myself. And I've always enjoyed working with adults and mentoring and things like that. But I certainly think that that's something that I've become more proficient at with age. So yeah, it's one of those interesting things. And I wonder if anyone listening has any reflections on that. What it's like to join a career as a more experienced person. Do you find that you have been given responsibilities when actually you really needed to be working on your practice, or have you found the whole system rather strange? I do, in my own research, I do find one of the most frequent complaints from teachers, experienced and new, is that they feel their skills that they arrived with or that they've developed over time are perhaps not utilised, and their employers are not making the best of them. And I can certainly think of examples where people have had many, many years in industry doing all kinds of things at extremely high levels, and there has been very little to no interest in the skills that they bring to their schools, which is a terrible shame and an enormous sense of frustration from those individuals. So I don't know if that resonates with any listeners. I'm going to play a few adverts now. I've been talking non-stop for nearly 14 minutes, so I'm going to play a few of our adverts now. If there is anyone listening who just wants to drop a message into the chat, I can see we have a couple of people who have been listening from further afield, from California and from Tama. So anyone who does want to call in is most welcome, but let's hear from our sponsors first.
Empowering education with Easy for You, Where innovation meets accessibility, our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionises the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for you, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MAT leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the 3-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
So I was just reflecting on some of the things that have happened over the years in terms of teaching and learning. I mentioned before that when I first trained, there wasn't cog science. We didn't talk about cog science, and that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about teacher professional learning, which I've really come to care a great deal about over the years. And in terms of that sort of thing, you know, I've always been somebody who would want to go on courses, want to try and stretch myself and challenge myself and all those kinds of things. And to that end, I did do my master's degree. I had the opportunity to carry on with that straight after my PGCE. And it's an interesting thing because I have done it and I was very happy to have done it. I have to say I didn't do it very well. And I don't think that anybody would sort of celebrate my master's degree thesis very hard. It was one that I did distance learning. It was one that I don't think it was particularly rigorous, and I don't think I worked anything like as hard as I should have worked. But I did do it and I did pass it. So that was all good. And, you know, I think that if you're somebody who does enjoy learning, then it's a great thing to do. But teaching is such a demanding job, isn't it? And we do have to give so much of ourselves. And I've always stuck to the academic side. although of course I do deal with any pastoral issues in my tutor group and so forth that would arise. But actually I'm much more academically minded, and I prefer to do my planning in advance, rather than, I think pastoral can cause you to be quite reactive sometimes just because of the nature of how it is. But if we think about, how things were back then, there was money available for it. It was a time when there was a political will to have teaching as a master's level profession. And that was very much what people were encouraged to do. And you walk away from your PGCE with 60 credits towards it, and I was able to transfer those to an online distance university, and I was able to get the rest of the credits to form the masters. It was really one of those things that I felt was the next thing to do without really giving too much deep thought to it. But it did really help me to kind of get into my ed tech, and I've always been very interested in education technology, and I've had my background in terms of video conferencing in the classroom that I'd done before I trained as a teacher, and I'm somebody that I try and find not shortcuts but efficiencies. And when you're an RS teacher and you're in a one-person department, and I'm sure this is the case for all kinds of other teachers as well. I don't want to get out the tiniest violin in the world, but certainly the maths of it are that you end up teaching pretty much everyone in Key Stage 3, or at least the vast majority of them, and then there's their books and there's their homework. And if you kind of do some quick back of an envelope maths, that's an awful lot of hours. I think it works out something like, I don't know, 30 hours to just to mark the homework over the course of a couple of weeks, and that's just not sustainable. So I became very interested in looking at how to not only use low stakes quizzing myself, but also voting pads, if you remember. So those things, I had a trial from the council to use some voting pads and the software to go with it, and there was a special case and all of that kind of stuff. And that's great. I love that kind of stuff, but not everybody does. And what I was beginning to learn in my experience with other teachers is that quite a lot of teachers are not minded to get involved with technology. And I'm talking, this would be 2010. I think we've all had the pandemic now, and we've all had to use remote learning, and we've all had to get very on board with digital learning platforms and all of those kinds of things. But 2010, certainly people had a bit of a reluctance, probably to do with apprehension of getting it wrong. But another thing that happened around that time is that we started to see, especially going into sort of the 2013 new Ofsted framework, we started to see that people had a very performative expectation of what a teacher should be doing. And this really started to bring in the fear of trying something new but it not going right and somebody seeing it. People started to be quite risk averse. And as we move through into 2013 and beyond, and the Ofsted framework, I don't know if anyone can remember that time when you had to demonstrate evidence of progress within 20 minutes in your lesson observation, and it was still a time when individual lessons would have been given a grade, and it was just all pretty unpleasant for everybody involved, I'm sure. And if you're trying to suggest innovation into that environment, and I'm happy to innovate myself, but if you're trying to encourage other teachers to kind of get on board with that when perhaps they don't feel comfortable and they feel worried not only about it going wrong because it's not very convenient in their classroom and it's disruptive, but also because somebody might catch it going wrong and you might end up being told you're unsatisfactory or something like that. It's a pretty scary time. And so I completely understand why people haven't necessarily wanted to get on board with it. But my master's was all about, those conversations and trying to encourage other teachers to lead other teachers towards sort of a digital future, as it were, back in the day. Another thing that happened at that time was also to do with Ofsted, and that I think was quite an interesting linguistic thing. And that was when the word satisfactory stopped being satisfactory, and it went from being satisfactory to I think it was requires improvement. And I can remember this, had quite an insidious impact on my perceptions. Perhaps maybe I'm quite a literal person, I don't know, but I can remember that happened, and it coincided with when I was buying my first house. And if you've ever bought a house, then you will know that there's certain checks that get done and certain reports come back about, the water table and the various land registries and things like that. And these things were coming back, and it said your this particular report about your property that you want to buy is satisfactory. And I can remember just my heart sinking, going, oh my God, what's wrong? Because we'd all got trained by that point to think that the word satisfactory was really bad news and to be avoided at all costs, which I feel is a bit of a shame. And again, it just tells you something about that environment that people were working in at that time. During all this time, we're human beings as well, aren't we? We're human beings as well. As teachers, we have lives, we have hopes, dreams, families, aspirations, and all of that kind of thing. And at this time, I was now in my sort of mid to late 30s, and I was having some fertility issues, not very nice ones. And so I ended up during that time spending an awful lot of time in various clinics and what have you. And one memory really stays with me that's, I think, had quite a profound effect on my approach and my view and I hope my empathy for other human beings as well, actually. And that is the day that I was sat in a clinic waiting for an appointment to do with my fertility issues. And it was around that time when Michael Wilshaw was saying, if we're pushing the teachers and making them feel uncomfortable, then good, it must be working. They need to feel uncomfortable. And, Michael Gove was speaking and saying that, we weren't working hard enough. And I thought, what, I'm sat here in a fertility clinic marking essays on abortion, of all things, because I'm an RS teacher. And all over the news, it's just telling me how hard I'm not working and how much I need to shape up or ship out. And yeah, it wasn't a happy time. And it's certainly lit a bit of a fire, because I have taken an attitude that there's something terribly, terribly wrong with the system. And it's been through several iterations since that time. We certainly have had other Ofsted frameworks, for better or worse. I think the pendulum swings one way and then it swings back the other, doesn't it? And certainly I don't think it's fixed yet, and I'm not sure what the solution might be. But we have definitely got people who work and live within systems that are, in many ways, I think, quite unhealthy. And physically, mentally. And the trouble with teachers is that, it is my belief, that you enter the profession because you care, because you want to make a difference, because you want to work hard, because you love your subject, because you want to share your passion with young people and encourage them to do their best and to find something that's going to be really fulfilling for them in their lives, of interest, of, to help them get where they want to be and become who they want to become. And so when we're thinking about that, if you're being told at the same time that you're not working hard enough, we tend to respond by thinking, right, well, I'll show them, I'll work even harder. And we work even harder. And eventually we become very burnt out because we are working harder to fulfill a job within a system that is not really set up for our success. And it's a real shame because we respond to criticism in one of two ways. One is to become cynical and to go, well, what can I do? I can only do my best because, there are limits. And the other is to work even harder and achieve the same result, which I'm fairly certain is a definition of insanity attributed to Einstein. So it's not a healthy place, and it hadn't been a healthy place to be for many people for a very, very long time, and that continues to be the case. And I've been through a couple of Ofsteds, and I've been downgraded and I've been upgraded, and I don't know that I did very much different on either occasion. Certainly the occasion where I got upgraded was at my recent school, at my school that I'm at now, and I was observed during that teaching year 13 religious studies, and quite a sensitive topic, and I definitely felt that I got asked some questions by some of the students that would make an Ofsted inspector blush, because we were doing sexual ethics, but it seems to have been all right and we got away with it, and it is on the syllabus after all, but it was rather an interesting morning. So we go through it, we do our best, we work hard, and if we can't make our hard work match the result, then we can burn out, and it's very, very sad. But what happened next? I decided that I was going to I had my son by then. If anyone was worrying about the outcome of my previous fertility story, I was eventually successful. But I had my son, and I came back from maternity leave, and I decided that I was going to see about my career now. I'm going to see where I'm going to go, what's going to happen. And I tried to broaden my skill set, but I've been fortunate in the fact that I love my subject, but unfortunate in the fact that I often didn't have anyone to line manage in my department, and that meant that I was up against people for promotion who'd been the head of history or the head of maths or the head of another big department, PE, whatever it might be. And a simple numbers game tells you that if you've managed if you've line managed a large department with 8 or 9 members of staff in it, then you've got more leadership experience than if you've managed a department with just you. So I was looking to broaden my horizons, and it was a bit of a struggle trying to get somewhere with it, and it just wasn't happening. I'm sure, and I'm absolutely confident, that there were many things that I did badly and did not know, but I also am sure that it wasn't quite a level playing field because of my experience, which was limited necessarily by my having led a very, very small department. So I decided to try and do something about this. And one of the things that really kind of set me off was that I was still banging the EdTech drum. I was still coming up against, we're going into, it's about 2017 by now, we're still coming up against people who think it's all very nice, but they're simply too busy to stop what they're doing and learn something new. It's a bit scary. It could go wrong. Nobody wants to be on the hook for something, having wasted some lesson time or whatever. So I was still very interested in this. I was finding it frustrating that other people weren't as excited as I was, and that's probably something to do with my personality. But nevertheless, I was trying to find a way to kind of make everyone a digital learning enthusiast, as such as I was. Anyway, I ended up going to see an inspirational speaker, and I won't name names, but this inspirational speaker inspired me to actually go and start looking at doing a doctorate. But it wasn't because I really enjoyed their speech. Actually, what inspired me was that this person did not get the realities of being a teacher. They were giving advice which was all fine if you've got lots of money, all fine if you've got lots of resources, but that is not the case for us in education. And I just thought, my time is not being respected, my intellect is not being respected, I'm being taught to suck eggs a little bit here. And if this was a speech I'd gone to see and paid to see because I like the person, I like their broadcasts and I like their books, then I probably would have had a really brilliant time because they're an absolutely engaging speaker. But it was my CPD and I was really annoyed. And I just thought, how strange that people who love learning, such as I do, who work in education, who actually quite like the things that are being said to them. It was simply the context in which it was being told to me that really, really caused me to become quite upset and angry, to the point where I thought, how can it be that CPD can land so badly with somebody who is actually quite a learning enthusiast? What causes that to happen? And it did inspire me to go away and have a proper think about it and to start on my EdD. And I'm going to play the news now and I'll tell you what happened next after I come back.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MAT leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the 3-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
Hi teachers, we're Apps for Good, and we give schools like yours free introductory computing courses. Our courses are for everyone, including those who aren't computing teachers, and they're fully equipped with resources mapped to the UK computing curriculum. Independent learning is central to our courses. Your students will develop essential and digital skills by working in teams to create prototype apps for good. We'll even connect you with industry volunteers to give real-world feedback. Let's empower every young person you teach to shape their future with technology. Speak to us at www.appsforgood.org.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
The BBC features an article on teacher retention, with a piece leading with the headline, "Would a 1:40 p.m. Friday finish stop teachers quitting?" The article reports on troubling statistics which reveal that the number of empty teaching posts in England has more than doubled in the past 3 years, according to recent official figures. Whilst politicians have pointed to rising teacher numbers, some have acknowledged that government's figures also show that targets for recruiting teacher trainees have been missed for 9 out of the 10 previous years. This is despite raises to starting salaries. Teacher recruitment has featured in election campaigns, with Labour promising 6,500 more teachers and the Lib Dems also saying they would invest in more. Giving teachers an early finish on a Friday or a day off every other week have been amongst ideas schools themselves are considering. The article features comments from one former teacher who recently left the profession. She said in the report that leaving to protect her physical and mental health after experiencing anxiety had been the best decision she'd ever made, and that this was despite support being offered by her school. She was also overwhelmed by workload. Annual figures released by the Department for Education at the start of June cover the academic year 2023 to 24. They show that on top of rising vacancy rates, the proportion of state school teachers leaving the sector is at its highest since 2010, with 39,971 teachers leaving. This represents 8.8% of the workforce and does not include those who have retired or died. A report in May by the Education Select Committee said recruitment and retention was a persistent challenge. Early Friday finishes have been trialled by a school in London. Lessons begin at 9 a.m. and finish at 4 p.m. Monday to Thursday, so no learning time is lost. The head teacher said the response from staff and students was positive, and it had helped the school support well-being for all. Full details of the report can be found on the BBC News website. In Northern Ireland, the Belfast Telegraph reports on higher education. It says that students in Northern Ireland who are about to leave for higher education feel they have been left at a disadvantage when applying for university places in the Republic of Ireland. The Secondary Students' Union of Northern Ireland has raised concerns about what it calls double standards north of the border. This year, students in Northern Ireland are sitting A-levels with a full return to normality and no mitigations for COVID-19 in grade awarding. In contrast, the Leaving Certificate marking has not returned to normal since the pandemic. The union has called this unjust and said it disadvantages those in Northern Ireland competing for the same university places. SSUNI President Ellen Taylor said that structural barriers to Northern Irish students will deepen inequality, and that the Irish government and Northern Irish ministers needed to work together to ensure young people's futures. The Guardian reports on a survey of children in the UK and Ireland, which reveals that they are reading fewer books than they did last year. The 2024 What Kids Are Reading report surveyed more than 1.2 million pupils and showed a 4.4% decrease in the number of books read by pupils. According to the study, the decline in reading is particularly acute in secondary schools and affects the difficulty of books being read as well as the volume. The survey showed pupils read progressively more challenging books until year 6, but after that the difficulty level tended to plateau until year 9 before a sharp drop in difficulty of books read by older secondary pupils. The research began in 2008, and this year is the first year there has been a decline in the numbers of books read, apart from during the first year of the pandemic. Explanations for the decline have included the drop in school attendance, with the number of pupils persistently absent increasing. Finally, the Washington Post features a story on Max the cat, who has been given an honorary doctorate from the Vermont State University. The 5-year-old tabby roams campus, socialises with students, and even attends lectures. He also has his own staff email address. Having attended the campus for 4 years, he has been awarded the doctorate in honour of his work. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
Well, we heard it here first. Honestly, I'm astonished to learn that a cat has got a doctorate. I know how I know what an undertaking it is to try and get a doctorate. So well done to Mr. Tibbles there. On a more serious note, I was just listening with interest there to the idea of some schools giving a half day on a Friday or a reduced timetable on a Friday and making up the hours elsewhere in the week. And, you know, of course, we'd all like to finish a bit early on a Friday. I can't, you know, people wouldn't argue against that, certainly. But do you know what I would really like to see? I would really like it if the job was completely manageable within a working week. I think that would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. You know, I'd really like it if the job didn't stress people out to the point that they are going part-time simply so that they can have any kind of a life. You're doing, you know, I think about some of the teachers who are new to the profession, and there's, I think, an active trend towards people saying, well, I'll do it, I'm happy, I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it full time. Couldn't possibly do it full time. And, you know, you just think this is not sustainable. I would much rather that more was done to make the job manageable in the time available, rather than keep going at such a pitch that means that people are not viewing it as a sensible option for your sort of work-life balance, which is a real shame because it is an enormously rewarding job. I do think that we need to keep our professional learning up to scratch. I think that could be more robust. I certainly know, as a matter of what I believe to be true, that there are things that are known about the way that human beings learn that were not known when I started my training. And I think that if I don't get on board with those things and learn them and try and at least adapt them into my practice, then somehow I haven't done what I should be doing. So I do think it's really, really important. You know, I signed up for my EdD in 2018 in a fit of rage after a particularly trying week at work in which I nearly left the profession. And I went home and I did some sums on the back of an envelope, which my husband will tell anybody is a really unreliable way of doing maths. There's zeros missing all over the place. So it's probably a good job that I didn't act on it. But I was ready to walk away, and I spoke to some of my friends who were doing their PhDs, and I was just like, something has to change. I felt the choices were just check out, go in, do the minimum, take the money, or burn out, really. I couldn't tolerate it. So I decided to have a look on different universities to see if other options were available, and I ended up signing up for an EdD. I got 2 interviews actually, and I accepted UCL, which the work has been hard, but it has been fascinating. And one of the strange things I think that happens to people undertaking research is that I went through a sort of a phase of, hopefulness that I was finally going to be able to solve some problems, to sort of righteous anger at realizing that not only were the problems well documented over 20 odd years, but actually once you understand the way the system works, the way education has been a political football, the way that different people understand the term professionalism in our sort of in our profession, once you kind of see it for what it is, then you come to really understand that you have worked in a really unhealthy environment where you are being made to feel responsible for systemic issues that you wouldn't have a hope of controlling. They're so ingrained, and we're all in this system, and we're all churning away in this system, trying to do our little bit, to work harder and to not be told that we are unsatisfactory or whatever it might be. Even if we're not told it, it's kind of baked into us, and we're defensive and we're tired and we're spending our own money and all of the rest of it. And I just think, once you start to see the system for what it is, then you can actually take on a lot more burden. So I would say that even though I've worked incredibly hard since 2018 to do the research that I'm hopefully nearly finished, it's been hugely enriching, and it has also helped me to approach my work and my professionalism with a wisdom that I just don't think that I had the capacity for. Sort of before I started, I have really come to see things a lot more clearly. I don't think you necessarily have to have done a doctorate to do that, but it has given me the confidence to actually say, this is a systemic problem. This is why it is happening. It isn't your fault. And I think that's a message that I do really want to share with new teachers. We will all have challenges. We will all have hard days. We will all have hard classes. We will all have to, teach something that's not our expertise and all the rest of it. And we'll all have to read around our subject. And that's fine. We'll all have to deal with pastoral issues, and they will be tough. And we will feel that we are taking our emotional selves to work. And that's part of it. And I think that's what people sign up for. But actually, what we are not is empowered to challenge 40 years of marketisation in education. The best we can do is to be wise to it, point it out, and then actually encourage a different kind of professionalism. And that's a professionalism where we lean into our learning, where we decide that we're going to contextualise evidence into our own context, through conversations with each other, through shared learning, and through risk taking in our practice that helps us to edge closer to something that is sustainable for ourselves, for our students. We've got to get rid of these false proxies that measure things that don't last the test of time. And we need to have the confidence in our expertise, our evidence-informed expertise, to be able to say, I stand by my decision. I did it this way. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but I did it this way and I had my reasons, and now I've learned from that. So I think it's really important that we do kind of take that power really by informing ourselves and by recognising that we are inside a system which has had an awful lot of political influence from all kinds of places over a great many years. I've really, really enjoyed working with teachers as they come through. I think now that I'm 17 years in, I've got a wisdom that I didn't have. I think if I had have been promoted into a more formal leadership role, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I probably would not have been a very good boss. I would not have been a very good leader. And I think that's taken the maturity for me to realise that. And I think that understanding one's professional life as a journey is much better. That sounds awful, doesn't it? It's a journey, not a destination. But I think there is some truth in that. And I just think that I'd really like to see a profession full of flourishing teachers who get all of the great things that we all want. We all want to inspire children. We all want to see them flourish. We all want to be able to, be somebody that's helped and contributed and made a difference and all of that stuff. We all want that, but it shouldn't come at the cost of our mental health, and it shouldn't come at the cost of us feeling that we can't, in any seriousness, take on a full-time job. But it shouldn't come, I don't think, going back to that news story, it shouldn't come either at the cost of, saying, well, let's just have Friday off. I want to work. I want to work hard. I want to work well. I want to have a sustainable job. So I'm coming to the end of my my hour now, which, I didn't know that I'd be able to talk for a whole hour, but there you go. I hope if you have persevered this far that you have enjoyed it and found it interesting. Let's hope for a future of teaching professionalism where we are empowered and we are able to challenge systemic problems together and understand the things that we can control, understand the things that we can't control, and something about the wisdom to know the difference as well, I think, in there. It has been, I hope, it's been very cathartic for me. I hope it's been interesting for you. And that brings us to the end of tonight's Tuesday Late Show with Kathryn Taylor. So many thanks to anyone who joined it, who joined us live in the studio. I did see people coming and going, and I hope that if you're listening back that you find this interesting, and I'd love to hear from you if you would like to come on to my show as a guest and talk about any of the issues I've raised tonight. I'm always up for a bit of debate and challenge. If you disagree with me, I'm very happy to have that conversation as well. So please do get in touch, and remember, there are Teachers Talk radio shows all week. Join me live again in a fortnight at the same time. Bye for now.